All right. Good evening, everybody. We are excited that you joined us tonight. Welcome to the Citizens for Self-Governance Grassroots Roundtable at the halfway point between the October GOP debate and the November GOP debate next week. I want to give a quick intro to Mark Meckler, President of Citizens for Self-Governance. Mark, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Appreciate all of you are here. I know you're activists, and that means you're busy. Lots of you have full-time jobs in addition to being activists, so we appreciate your time. You know, we're exactly 1 year out now from the 2016 presidential elections, if you look at the calendar. So it's pretty extraordinary. We've got primaries beginning in February already, and that means that before you and I know it, we're going to be past choosing nominees and onto the general election. Somehow it seems like this cycle just never ends. One of the things that's really important to me, though, as we move forward into this countdown year is that you guys understand that your opinions really matter. And I don't mean that only as voters or only as activists, and I don't mean just to me and Citizens for Self-Governance, but your opinions actually matter in the media. And there's often this disconnect between the media and the grassroots, though. And I know when I travel around, I regularly talk to grassroots all over the country. I've been in 30 states so far this year. And they say that the media doesn't get them, doesn't pay attention to the grassroots, doesn't care what the grassroots think. Sometimes they say that the media even maliciously misrepresents them. And I could say sometimes some of those or all those things are true, but I can also tell you, because of all my interactions with the media, and many of them positive, that for them, knowing what you guys think, what activists on the ground really think, that's almost an impossible task. I mean, put yourself in the seat of a journalist. How do you know what the grassroots are really thinking? Who do you call, right? Is there somebody in your contacts that just says the grassroots? So it's really hard for media folks if you're in D.C. or New York or anywhere else in the country, and you're trying to figure out and get a pulse on what the grassroots are really thinking. You can look at the polls. I think they're often inaccurate. You can try and surf the websites of all these different conservative groups. Really hard to do. So the Grassroots Roundtable that we're doing month by month is an attempt to cross that bridge, the bridge between the grassroots and the media. What we do is we pull together a monthly call, over 100 grassroots leaders from across the country. You guys were selected and invited because you head up, help lead grassroots groups around the country, local groups, state groups, national groups. And we get you on the phone. We ask you a bunch of questions that we think journalists want to know the answers to, want to hear you weigh in on. All of this is recorded. The journalists are listening in. It's all on the record. This is really important to remember that. This is on the record and for attribution. So what that means is we're going to ask you your name and where you're from and what group you're affiliated with before you give your answers. What we're trying to do here is provide a service to both groups, to the grassroots, to give you guys a voice, because this is where I come from, and I know how frustrating it can be when you think you're not fairly represented in the media, and for the media, so that they have access to you, the real grassroots leaders. So here are the ground rules. All of this is on the record and for attribution. Again, I said that a few times. Really important you understand. Anything you say here can and may be quoted. And we're going to ask you your name, where you're from, what group you lead, if you don't lead off with that. I'm going to ask a series of questions on the call. And you're able to electronically raise your hand by hitting the *2 key. So remember that. *2 is going to allow you to raise your hand when you want to answer one of the questions. I encourage everybody on the call, get in on the act, answer the questions, help the journalists that are on the call tonight to get a fair perspective, understanding of what the grassroots are thinking out there. And by doing that, we're going to provide them a service. You're going to get fairly represented. If your name's clear on the switchboard, then I may say it and spell it. If not, I'm going to ask you to say and spell your name, say your location, and what local group you're affiliated with. Really important if you're located or affiliated with a local Tea Party or a 912 group, a church group, a gun group, whatever it is, really important that you state your affiliations. This is going to help the journalists to know who they're listening to. So with that, we're going to start, and we're going to roll right into it. And the first question is about this idea that here we are 1 year out from the 2016 elections. So the question is kind of a general question for you. I'm trying to gauge enthusiasm here for the journalists. How are you feeling about the upcoming election generally? I'm not talking about any particular candidate. I'm talking about you've got elections coming up in 2016. Obviously, they're a big deal. The question is, are you enthusiastic about voting? How do you feel about the election generally? Excited to get out there and punch that card or hit that machine? And then the secondary question, I think sometimes it's underestimated how activists are not likely voters. They are voters, period. do you know any activists who probably won't vote or who might not vote, or do we vote 100%? So the question really is, are you enthusiastic generally? How do you feel about voting, and do you know anybody who's not going to vote? So go ahead and raise your hand if you want to talk about just the general feeling about enthusiasm about the upcoming elections in your group and about voting generally. That's what we're looking for here. So I'm going to start, Tamara, if we could go to San Augustine, Texas, Art Bedford. Art, Tamara's going to unmute you. Go ahead. Tell us what your feelings are about the 2016 elections.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And can you tell us
Great.
what group you're associated with, Art?
Yes, I am a regional captain with the Convention of States, Texas.
Okay, great.
And
so tell us about the upcoming elections. How are you feeling about them?
Okay, I think, well, I for one am enthusiastic, and I think most activists are very enthusiastic because we understand that this election coming up, especially for the president, is one that is going to either change our country for the better or continue it for the worst. And I think most conservative activists feel the same way.
And what if let me ask a question about what if you get a candidate, what if we end up with a candidate you don't like? Do you think that's going to keep people from voting, or are people still going to come out and vote no matter what?
Well, if there's a candidate that I don't like, of course I'm going to look for an alternate.
But let's say we have a Republican nominee that you don't love. Are you going to vote anyway?
Yes, I probably will. There's only a couple of reasons that I would really hesitate. I'm also a member of the Texas Board of Volunteers, and we've been fighting illegal immigration for years. And if I knew that candidate was all for amnesty and open borders, I would have a tough time. I would really have a tough time. I would definitely write somebody else in, probably.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Tamara, let's go next we're going to go to, I think you said Gail Engelhardt in Atlanta, Georgia.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. What do you want me to answer for you?
So the question is, 2016 elections, how are you feeling about the election generally? Are you enthusiastic about what's coming up in 2016?
Yes, I am. I happen to be working on a campaign for a presidential candidate right now, but I am a political activist, and I'm with the North Georgia Tea Party Alliance. I'm also a district captain for COS, Convention of the States. In fact, here in Georgia, we were the first state to pass it, the resolution in both houses.
Excellent. So you're looking forward to the election. You think your groups that you're
Absolutely.
working with are enthused about the election?
They are.
Okay, great. Tamara, let's go ahead and move on to Cordova, Tennessee. This is Jim Gosney, Gosney. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, just can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a local volunteer with the Convention of States in Tennessee. And yeah, I'm enthusiastic about the election. I think it's always a time for us to, try to make our voice heard and make some changes that we think we need done. Okay, great.
Let's go ahead and move on to looks like Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Carl Koenigs, Koenigs. Carl, go ahead. Are people that you know generally enthusiastic about the 2016 election?
I work with several different organizations. The primary organization is Solidarity for 9th and 10th Amendments Coalition. I have a pretty large group of something like 2,400 members, something in that order.
Okay.
We also work with the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association as well as the Oath Keepers. We are not excited about this election. I was also a member of Americans for Prosperity, and I was going to go on stage with Paul Ryan. And I started talking to him at a personal moment. He trusted me at that time. And he told me, I asked him about several different constitutional torts, particularly in regard to the 9th and 10th Amendments. And I said, how is the Republican Party going to restore our 9th and 10th Amendment laws? And he looked at me and he said, Carl, if we would obey the 10th Amendment, how would we ever be able to get people in our chosen special interest groups to come under our big tent? He also said, how would we get, bigger corporations to come under our big tent? So right there told the story.
So it sounds like you're worried regardless of who's elected.
Right, but we have a plan to resolve all that, which is use state elections to force and compel our state assemblymen and our state senators to sponsor and facilitate the passage of our state joint sovereignty resolution with the rest provision that was drafted by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson.
Got it. So the focus there being on,
purpose.
Obviously the focus is on state sovereignty as opposed to federal elections directly. So,
well, it's more than that. It's actually a plan, and we've got people from all over the nation working on this right now.
Got it. Thanks, Carl. I appreciate it. And let's go ahead and move on to Barbara Sloan in Sacramento, California. That's S-L-O-A-N, Barbara. Barbara, tell me the groups that you work with, who are you affiliated with, and are they enthusiastic about the upcoming election, or is there some trepidation out there?
Hi, this is Barbara from Elk Grove Tea Party in Northern California, and I think the people in our group are cautiously enthusiastic about our presidential candidates particularly. I'm really excited that Donald Trump and Ben Carson and it appears Ted Cruz are able to go around the mainstream media, which, that's just amazing that they're able to get their message out consistently going around the mainstream media. I'm also encouraged because of the Kentucky election recently with Mark Bevin. I prayed that he'd win. I knew he was a Tea Party Christian, and he did win, even though the polls said that it was neck and neck. The other thing is, I don't know if you know about the Decision America with Franklin Graham. He's going to all 50 capitals between January and October and have prayer rallies at all the state capitals throughout the United States. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited that people in California are engaged in the political process. Even though we're a blue state, we're engaged in the process. I'm excited about Breitbart News. They're a great site. And one of my concerns is I listen to Rush consistently, and he said the other day that, Obama may stay in office. If they don't like Hillary, Obama may stay in office. So that is a concern because I don't put anything past Obama, particularly since Congress is just, in bed with Obama. It's very frightening to me.
So we're going to stay on subject here. So let's move on to our next question, Tamara. And Barbara brought this up. We just had some state elections. A lot of interesting stuff happened all across the country. I want to know, your groups, are they paying attention to those state elections? Is it just national that they pay attention? She mentioned Matt Bevin winning the governorship, really interesting lieutenant governor candidate that won there in Kentucky. They ran together. So are your groups paying attention to the state elections that just took place, and do you think they're showing any trends? In other words, are the things you're seeing that are exciting you that make 2016 look better? Are you worried? Did you pay attention to the state elections? So let's go first to Jay Carroll. Jay is in Pie Town, New Mexico. Jay, are you there?
Right here, Mark. How are you?
Good. Go ahead, Jay.
Good. Yeah, we're paying attention. And I think that's where the thrust of our interest and focus as citizens need to be is at the local and state levels.
So what did you see something in the elections this week that gives you hope?
Well, we didn't have anything going on in New Mexico, but certainly what happened in Ohio, what happened in Kentucky, what happened in Virginia, the ouster of the sheriff in San Francisco that's big news. And that happens locally with people who are thoroughly fed up with their local governments. And what we're experiencing at the local level is a microcosm of what the federal government has become.
Right. So to me, that's really interesting. And what you're telling me, and what I just heard, was a pretty broad reach, that you're paying attention all over the country, all the way down to local elections, like you said, like the sheriff in San Francisco on the sanctuary city issue.
Well, sure. I mean, I try to stay informed. I try to find something to be inspired about. And when I know that there's people like me, I tell people frequently, hey, we're not the only two people having this conversation.
No, there's at least 100 of us on this call, so we're doing okay, Jay.
Certainly, and I think Mark, that with the Convention of States, if we can get people to rally around a few leaders who will allow themselves to be led and look forward to a brighter future. It's hard to paint a pretty picture for a lot of people, and many people have very good reason to not have a real shiny outlook on the future.
Yep. All right, we're gonna move on, Jay, because I want to keep this moving and give other people a chance.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to the next question, Tamara. The next question is, it looks like the next Republican debate's coming up next week in Milwaukee. So we've seen some pretty crazy stuff in the Republican debates before, in the last few debates, starting with the Fox debate and all the way through. The question is, what do you want to see in this debate that's different than what you've seen in past debates? And I'm specifically, I don't want you to just focus on, I know everybody was real mad about the last debate and the biased moderators and all that. What is it that you're looking for? What do you really want to hear? What kind of subjects do you really want addressed in depth that you don't feel have been addressed in the debate? So what kind of changes do you want to see? We've got a big debate coming up. It's a Fox Business hosted debate, so here's a chance for something different. What do you really want to see from or hear out of those debates? I'm going to start by going to John Thoreau, T-H-E-R-R-I-A-U-L-T, John Thoreau in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
I'm actually in Keene, New Hampshire, but
okay.
It's an old cell phone number.
Got it. So from New Hampshire, early state. So what do you want to see out of the debates that you haven't seen so far? What kind of new subjects do you want to see discussed or gone into depth on?
Well, given that the debates are a national platform, I'd like the candidates to get enough time to be able to lay out their positions on key parts of their platform. We get bits and pieces here and there, but it'd be nice to be able to see it in a big picture at one time. And then, without sort of counterpoint, just, candidate A, what are his positions on some of the major points and what's his policy, and candidate B, candidate C, candidate D. And after all that's laid out, then you could have a debate.
Right. So you're looking, though, it sounds like a little bit less contentious, less back and forth, and more straight-up policy positions.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense. I've heard that from a lot of folks. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. Good to hear from an early voting state like New Hampshire. Let's go to Kansas City, Kansas. Just says cell phone number. Last four digits are 8919. Please give us your first and last name, spelling.
Yeah, my name is Joseph Killeen. It's Killeen. I'm actually in Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm just getting started with Convention of States, Missouri. I'm really interested in hearing the candidates talk about the state of the national budget. I've got a lot of budget concerns. I have 3 small children, and I'm really worried about the debt being passed on to them. And I'm also very concerned about our national defense. I'd like to hear, maybe I'm not like most people, but I'd settle in for a 10-hour debate. I know it sounds outrageous to a lot of people, but I'm really interested in hearing one candidate talk for 5 or 10 minutes on a subject, and I'll listen to them. I'll listen to what they have to say. maybe it's, you know, other folks having a short attention span or something. But
no, it sounds to me like you're very consistent. I mean, this is 2 in a row. What we've heard is you want to hear more substance, you want more time. So I really like that. Tamara, let's go ahead and move on so we can get everybody in. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. I want to go to let's see, who have we got next here? Let's go to they're jumping around here, Tamara. I'm having a hard time looking at these. Let's go to Jerry Rowe in Marion, Indiana. That's R-O-W-E, Jerry Rowe. Jerry, are you with us? Jerry Rowe, Marion, Indiana.
No?
Yep.
Okay, good. I had it muted. So anyway, what I haven't heard talked about so far, I don't believe, is the overreach of all the agencies, like the EPA, for instance. In Indiana here, oh, by the way, I'm with the Grant County Tea Party here at Marion, Indiana. And anyway, one of the topics here is, since we're a rural state, we have a lot of farming going on, and the water rule that the EPA is coming out with is very damaging to farming. And then also we use a lot of electricity in this state for manufacturing, and of course we got winter here and heating and all those things, so industry. So we need electricity, and EPA is just wrecking the electric industry here. Over 50% of our electricity is generated by coal, and they're just shutting those power plants down left and right. It's very damaging to the entire economy of our state.
So to summarize, what you're looking for is for the candidates to have some discussion about how regulations are affecting business and industry in the states.
Yes. Your question was about something that hadn't been discussed, and that's one big one.
Okay, yeah, I think that's great. Hey, Tamara, let's go ahead and move on to David Kekta, K-E-C-K-T-A. And David is in Phoenix, Arizona. Go ahead, David.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for putting me on. I'm affiliated with, I guess you could say, the local Tea Party group, and I also participate with a handful of individuals on social media who dispel some of the misnomers and, I guess, rhetoric that's being put out by some of the Bloomberg groups.
Okay.
Regarding, like, some of the Second Amendment issues out there.
Right.
But specifically regarding the debates, I think personally for me, I would like to see less moderation and more time given to the candidates. I think somebody mentioned something about letting the candidates put out their plan and, you know, kind of like going down the line, each one of them saying what they're for. And I'd like to see that too, but I'd also like to see the candidates actually have more rebuttals between each other and more time to debate each other. So there's more like compare and contrasting between them all.
Right. So again, you know, this is interesting. We're getting a theme here. I know I feel this way when I'm watching the debates. It sounds like, and Tam, let's go ahead and move on to somebody else. It sounds like what we've got going on is there's really a consistent theme that people tired of the moderators intervening, want to see more time for the candidates. I think we're going to get a little of that just by numbers. I just saw tonight that Mike Huckabee, Chris Christie have been relegated to the kids' table in the earlier debate. So, and a couple of the folks who were at that table are now out of the debates altogether. So we may see each of the candidates get a little more time. That would be good. So let's go on one more on this question. I don't have a name. It's Savannah, Georgia. We've got a cell phone from Savannah. Last four digits are 8728.
Hey, Mark, it's Jeannie Seaver.
Hey,
I'm a How are you?
Good.
I appreciate you doing this tonight. You know, the Grassroots, you know, is very strong around the nation, and we appreciate you putting this all together on the same call. I'm the co-founder of the Savannah Tea Party and also the chairman and president of the Georgia Grassroots Coalition, which is about 180,000 members all over the state. And in regards to the debates, I think that I would like to see, and many of us would like to see, like you said, learn more about the candidates and an opening statement of about 3 minutes talking about their main platform items and the solutions to it. Then I think that they need to compare themselves against, you know, their stances and go after Hillary Clinton. not each other, and also be allowed a closing statement of at least 1 minute.
Okay, great. And by the way, really appreciate having you on the call. I want everybody to notice one of the things that she said that's so important, a coalition of grassroots groups all over the state of Georgia. This is one of the things that's not really reported in the media, difficult to report on. All of these groups, all of us work together. And so you've got all these different groups, small Tea Parties, 9/12 groups, Second Amendment groups, all working together and coordinating together. It's pretty extraordinary. So thanks for being one of the leaders of that in Georgia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next question now. And this is, I think we're starting to see this bubble up in the news a lot. I think it's really interesting. A lot of the party officials are starting to talk about this. We've got a bunch of the candidates in the Republican primaries right now that are polling really low. They're sub 5%. The question is, what do your groups think about that? Should they stick in? Are those voices still worth hearing? Or is it time for those candidates to drop out so we can focus on the top group of candidates? So the real question for you guys, pretty simple, and really would like to get some participation, especially early states. If you're in South Carolina, if you're, places where there's going to be voting, New Hampshire, Nevada, states like that. I'd love to have some of the early states weighing in if you guys could. So the question again, real simple question is it time for folks to stop dropping out? I'll tell you, I read an article today saying, time for some unity in the party, time to get rid of some of these lower-end candidates. I don't know if you guys saw, like I said, Mike Huckabee got bumped to the lower-level debate. Good guy, obviously a good conservative, but now he's going to be in the early debate. You got the same thing happen to Chris Christie. It might be the death knell for their campaigns. You got Jeb Bush in some polls running 4%. Is it time for these guys to step aside? So that's really my question. Raise your hand if you want to answer that one. Looks like everybody's kind of shy on this question. How about, let's see, anybody new popping up? There we go. Let's go to North Augusta, South Carolina, early voting state. This is Claude O'Donovan. Claude, are you there?
I sure am. Us in these early voting states, we get a great opportunity. I mean, I have met virtually every one of the candidates and seen them speak 1, 2, or 3 times. I think all this from a different angle, but I really do think it's time to winnow out a few folks that just are hanging on by their toenails, it's just, let's clear the decks a little bit. Let's get a little more clarity, give the real contenders a chance to talk a little more. And
is that, Claude, is that what you're hearing in the grassroots, generally speaking? Are people just sort of getting candidate fatigue and they're ready for less candidates on the playing field?
Not really yet. We just haven't discussed that, but my personal feeling, I'll be honest, I have not discussed that with anybody else. But I will say this, I have almost every time you've done a poll, I've been a Carly Fiorina. I am now a Ted Cruz guy. So I'm a convert to the mass of people that were here before.
Okay, great. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the call. Let's go to Charlotte, North Carolina. We've got Mike Falkenberry. Mike, what are you hearing? What's the buzz about should the candidates drop out or stay in? Mike Falkenberry? Charlotte, are you there, Mike? Or you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, Mark. I was on mute myself.
Go ahead.
I'm definitely hearing from folks I talk to, not on any sort of formal basis, just talking to people, which I do a lot. They're tired of. It's not so much that they're tired of the individuals. It's the message is being split in so many small pieces that you can't get enough information from for lack of a better word, the legitimate candidates. So I do think, and I think people are beginning to say, it's time for some people to get out of the way. I'm glad to see the debate, as you've mentioned, coming up on Fox. They've eliminated, I saw where Graham and Pataki and I think somebody else are not even going to be in it, even at the kiddie table. And then they've cut down the number at the big debate. But it seems to me we've got 4 candidates that probably have a serious chance of moving forward. And I would say Trump Carson, Cruz, and Rubio. And I think it's time definitely for some of the others, if not for all of the others, for the good of the party and the good of the country, frankly, to say, well, it's not my turn, I'm not catching fire, or whatever the case is, but it's just not happening, and I need to get out of the way.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mike. And Mike, what groups are you affiliated with there in Charlotte?
I'm sorry, I'm the state director for Convention of States in North Carolina.
Okay, great. And did you come out of the Tea Party movement, Mike? Is that your background?
Not directly. Been affiliated with it, but not formally, no.
Okay, great. And just out of curiosity, were you involved in politics before all this crazy stuff started happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been pretty engaged for a lot of years.
And were you engaged at the party level? Have you ever run for office, or what kind of stuff did you do prior to this?
No, more grassroots.
Okay.
Organizing smaller groups and getting sort of building coalitions with smaller groups and trying to turn them into bigger groups.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate your service out there. Sure. All right, next we're going to go to Bob Diamond in Charlotte. Are you Charlotte, North Carolina?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Just my background. I've been in the Tea Party since 9 or 10.
Okay.
I'm on the Ted Cruz State Committee. I'm a Convention State District Captain, and I was the precinct organization chairman for Mecklenburg County, the Republican Party. And I'm ready to cut the chase and get the four guys that are in the race to hear what they have to say.
And is that what you're hearing from all these groups that you're involved with? Are a lot of people seem to have that sentiment now?
Well, right now it's just Ted Cruz is just screaming to the top, but we want to hear everybody else too.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thanks. Tam, we're going to move on to the next question here. And this question is about, we got to ask the obligatory Donald Trump question. I apologize, but he's still the guy that gets most of the press. The question is, we see Trump starting to slip in the polls a bit. We see some other people rising. The question is, the folks that you know in your groups that have been Trump supporters, are we seeing any slippage in his support? Are people looking more seriously at other candidates? So for those of you, maybe you were personally have been a Trump supporter in the past, or you had a bunch of people in your groups that were Trump supporters, the question is the game changing? Is something about the Donald wearing thin on people? Are people looking for a more serious policy prescription? Or are they tired of his, the way he's perceived in the media? Just generally, what are people out there feeling about Donald Trump? Is there enthusiasm in the grassroots for Trump still? Is that enthusiasm waning? What are you guys hearing in your own groups? And so I'd be really interested what we're hearing in Texas, what we're hearing in Florida. Like I see Terry in Florida. I see George in Florida. I'd love to know what you guys are hearing about Trump. So anybody want to speak up on Donald Trump? Are you guys all scared of the Trump? Maybe you're worried he'll trash you if you speak up on him, right? How about Gail in Atlanta, Georgia? Let's go to Gail.
What we're hearing mostly from our people in the Tea Party, our alliance groups, and that I belong to the Georgia Grassroots Coalition, is that they're tired of listening to 1- and 2-syllable words out of Donald Trump. He seems to repeat himself over and over and over again. It's wearing real thin.
Okay, and you're hearing that broadly? Is that why you think his support is slipping?
Yes. I am a Ted Cruz supporter all the way. I'm working on his campaign. But for the people that were Trump supporters, many of them are coming over to Ted's side. Some of them are still undecided, but a lot of people are saying that they're getting tired of the same thing said over and over again by him.
Okay, great.
It doesn't,
I appreciate your input.
He repeats himself all the time.
Yep. No, and we're hearing that all over the country. So that was something I was curious if you guys, as I travel around, I'm starting to hear that. I also see we've got some folks on here from Iowa. I'd love to hear from folks in Iowa. I see Colorado and some folks in Missouri that I haven't heard from. So you guys don't be shy. Put your hands up. I'm going to move on to the next question. I know we're starting to burn through our time here. So this question is about general fluidity of voting opinions. In other words, one of the things that I found interesting throughout the race is you see all this polling, you guys hear the polls, and Trump at 26, Carson at 23, or vice versa, whatever it is. my read on it when I'm listening to people is nobody's really chosen, or very few people have chosen. I've even heard people who started working on one campaign and have switched. So the question is, among the people you know, the groups that you work with, do you think most people have a firm choice in mind? Are they done? Have they heard enough to make their decisions? Or are the folks who've made a choice just leaning and willing to change? So the general question is there flexibility in the grassroots electorate? Are they dialed in on a candidate? Are they true supporters, true believers in any given candidate? Or do you feel like there's a lot of flex out there? So that's what I'm looking for out of your groups locally. And while you guys raise your hands, remember star 2 to raise your hand. Let's get some folks in who haven't talked already. When I travel around, what I'm seeing a lot of is I talk to people and ask them who they like, and they like somebody, and then I ask them, are they open to changing? Almost everybody I talk to, the vast majority, are open to changing. They want to watch the debate. So I find that fascinating, because if that's true, if that sense is true, then the polls are not necessarily, they may be accurate in the moment, but things change from time to time. So I find that really interesting. So I want to get some of your input on that. Let's go to Pam Wolschlegel. That's WOHLSCHLEGEL, and that's West Palm Beach, Florida. Pam.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, we do. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I think the question was about the
Are people just absolutely decided on their candidates, or is there flexibility and fluidity in what
yes,
they're thinking right now?
That's right. Absolutely not. There seems to be quite a bit of fluidity. I mean, I'd say there's probably 20 or 30% of the people that are dead set on who they want. And from the Tea Party group, I would say that those are mostly the people that are Ted Cruz fans. But there are a lot of people that seem to be shifting between Marco Rubio and Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina, and even into Ted Cruz. I was talking to 2 people today, and they like all 4 of them. They actually put Ted Cruz in the same category.
And Pam, can you tell us what's your political background? You've been in the fight for a while.
Well, I've always been a Republican. That's my party since I was a teenage Republican. But I've been in the grassroots and the Tea Party movement since the end of 2009. And I was with Citizens for Self-Governance and with Convention of States. And I just did the simulation.
You've also participated in local party politics, right?
Yes. Right now I'm on the REC, the Republican Executive Committee in Palm Beach County.
Okay.
And I'm doing their technology and social media initiative.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pam. Thanks for being engaged. And the reason I wanted Pam to bring that stuff up, why I think this is important, is this is something that I see in the grassroots all across the country. So Pam's told you she's been engaged in politics literally since she was a kid in the Republican Party. She's a Tea Partier. She's engaged in a whole bunch of different groups, and she's still engaged in her local party at the executive committee level. So I think that's pretty extraordinary, and I see a lot of that in the grassroots today. The grassroots have really matured in a way where a lot of people who are really experienced in politics, who've been doing it all their life, are really heavily involved in the grassroots movement right now. So this is kind of to me, this is an interesting question because I just haven't heard people talk about this before. The Democratic debate is going to be held November 14th in Des Moines. And I watched the first Democratic debate. I thought it was really interesting and definitely a contrast to the Republican debate. And I thought it was interesting to see their candidates, to see the difference in the issues, to see how the various candidates handle themselves. You know, I'm certain I won't be voting Democrat, but I think it's interesting to watch it and to pay attention to the whole process. And so the question that I have for you is, just real quickly, who's going to watch the Democratic debate? Are any of you going to watch it? Do any of your groups talk about watching it? Are there people in your groups that you know watch the Democratic debate? I'm just curious what kind of crossover there is there. So real quickly, if you want to just raise your hand and give me a yay or a nay, you're going to watch the debate and maybe why you watch the debate. Let's go first to Jay in New Mexico.
No, I won't be watching the Democrat debate. For me, just watching the surrogates around the country promote that agenda is all I can stand on a daily basis. I listen to six or 8 hours of talk radio every day. Plus, I study the topics on the internet, and no, it wouldn't be of any interest to me because there would be nothing that would be edifying that I could that I say I'm a better person for.
Got it. Let's go to David in Phoenix.
Hi. No, I won't be watching it. Socialism is socialism, no matter whether it's watered down or not, and I have no interest in seeing them promote their socialist agendas.
Okay, thanks. Is there anybody, raise your hand if you're going to be watching the debate. It seems like we got a pretty consistent theme. Let's go to, in Springfield, Missouri, Marilee Shanuel.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Marilee.
I'm going to try to hear the debate this time, the Democratic. By mistake, once in a while, I get some of their literature and know how they're thinking and working. And a man called into our talk radio here in Springfield, very soon after that last Democratic debate. And I think he had a really good burst of insight there. He said that the Democrats were going to save the babies, and they're going to save the planet, and they're going to save this, that, and the other thing. And he feels that the Republicans would do well to harp on that as well, and what Republicans do and have done. And I haven't Googled Ben Carson's charitable efforts, but he's got a big foundation, and I think Trump does too. And so he said, this caller, and he was a Republican, he was just sort of sharing what he picked up from the debate. He said, if you don't have God, you need the government. And he felt that the people who still have God in their lives tell more about the Republican attitude toward helping people, what they do, what they want to do.
So your reason for being interested in the debate is more to see the tactics and the techniques that are used on the other side, it sounds like.
Yes, and get ideas for us, yes.
Great. All right, let's move along here, Tam. Let's move to, I can't tell the first name. The last name is Kurtinitis, first initial G in Des Moines, Iowa. It's Kurtinitis. And your first name?
My first name's Joel.
Go ahead, Joel.
Hey, you asked, I'm up in Iowa here, so I was kind of keeping my powder dry on the questions, but you asked if we're going to be watching the debate, and my wife and I will be watching the Democratic debate. We watched the last one as well, and we feel like it's a good idea to know your enemy in terms of party warfare. And honestly, it was a little bit surprising watching that. We quickly came to the conclusion that, if Jim Webb was running as a Republican, he'd be the halfway up the chain on most conservative candidates there. And then, vice versa. Honestly, we watched the Democrat debates for a contrast.
All right, great. No, I appreciate that.
That's the way to go.
All right. And I watched that debate also. I thought it was really interesting. I think, for me, the most fascinating thing about watching the Democratic debate is how Republicans, what I hear, Republicans, conservatives roundly slamming Hillary as essentially an incapable candidate and how easy it's going to be to beat her. And what I saw was a candidate that was very at ease, totally in command of the issues, the best on the stage of the Democratic debate. So I thought that was really educational to watch that. Let's go to Karen Kiefer in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Karen, are you going to be watching the Democratic debate?
Probably I will. And I just wanted to back up to one of your questions regarding winnowing down the field of candidates on the Republican side. I would proceed with caution because we are a capitalistic country founded on free, wholesome competition. And so the more the better in terms of selecting the right candidate. Plus, several of the candidates on our ticket are not constitutionally eligible for the office of president, as like Obama, they are not natural-born citizens. And I'm sure that ballot challenges will be launched against them, which may eliminate their candidacy. So
you're saying patience is warranted and hang out and wait to see what happens. All right.
Yes, exactly.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your input on that. All right. Tam, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. The next question is, I'm asking you to sort of look into your crystal ball, and as we move past the primary, so we're looking ahead here and into the general election, do you have any predictions as to what the top 2 or 3 issues in the general election will be? You hear what the candidates are talking about. You guys know from your local groups what you think people want to hear about. What do you think the top 2 or 3 issues are going to be in the general election? Remember, right now what you're witnessing is the fight between Republicans about Republican issues, but that's going to change when we get to the general election, because obviously there's a broader electorate that you've got to deal with. So what do you think are the top couple of issues that we're going to be fighting about come September, October, November 2016? What are your thoughts on that? And again, I'm going to be a little bit biased if you're in an early voting state. I'm interested in hearing from you guys in the early voting states. So I know journalists are really interested in hearing from you guys. I see some folks in Indiana I haven't heard from, not necessarily voting. I see West Virginia we haven't heard from tonight yet. So it's *2 if you want to answer the question. It looks like nobody wants to predict, Tamara. I might go on to the next question here if we don't get any. Here we go, a whole bunch of people jumping in. All right, let's go to Missouri, in Potosi, Missouri, Christy Johns. Christy, go ahead and give us your predictions for what the issues are going to be in the general election.
Well, it's actually Brandon Johns.
Hey, Brandon.
Under my wife's name. But one of the things, the main 3 things that I do think that are going to be a part of the general election are actually some of the things that the Republicans are talking about, such as the debt ceiling, as well as immigration and gun rights. As you know, Hillary and Bernie Sanders have both been attacking gun rights left and right. And the debt ceiling, we as Republicans and Tea Partiers and grassroots people believe that we don't need to have this debt ceiling, and it's the opposite with the Democrats.
All right, I think those are definitely in the limelight. So let's go ahead and move on to George Blumel, Blumel, in West Palm Beach, Florida. George, what do you think the issues are going to be come 2016?
So wait a minute, it's got to be spending. This new budget deal, raises all the debt limits and everything. So that's got to be up there. And terror is going to get closer to home. That's going to be a bigger problem also. And by the way, on the watching the Democrats, I like what Clark, the sheriff in Milwaukee, said. If I wanted to get lied to, I'd go interrogate a criminal.
Okay. People have different reasons for watching it. They want to participate in the process. They want to understand what the other side is saying.
They're good reasons. By the way, I want to also mention that Pam Wolfsagel, who you had on a little earlier.
Yep.
I get the speakers for our Republican club here in Palm Beach County, and I had her speak last month on the Convention of States, and she did a marvelous job.
She's an amazing woman. Know her well, so I appreciate hearing that. All right, let's go ahead and move along to, let's go to Barbara in Sacramento, California.
It'll be immigration, jobs, and immigration. And if we get hit with a terror attack, a plane going down during the holidays, it'll be that too.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to move along, and we're going to close it out with one last question. We do this is how we close out all of these Grassroots Roundtable calls. And I didn't do this intentionally on the first call. We did it sort of by accident. But this is one where I really want all of you or a whole bunch of you to raise your hand. We're going to hit as many as we can. The question is, right now, in your local grassroots groups, you guys have your finger on the pulse. I know you do because I talk to y'all all the time. Who's the most supported candidate in your state, in your area? So as many people as we can, we're going to rip down the list. I'd like to get a whole bunch of you. I want to know who's leading. And this means, look, just because you're a Ted Cruz fan, if more people are fans of Trump, then I want to hear Trump. I don't want you to be biased to your own candidate. What I want to know is, in your group, in your area, who is it that people are supporting? Where do you see the broadest support? And again, don't be biased to your own candidate. Let's just get it out there and rip through a bunch of you. So go ahead and raise your hands in your state, in your groups, in your area. Who seems to have the lead right now in enthusiasm and just numbers of people? So let's start with Let's start with Ian from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Ian, who is it?
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. So is that far and away clearly Ted Cruz in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think that Donald Trump is running a close second, but Ted is really making gains. Especially his background and his education are well known now, and he's just making great strides here in Oklahoma.
Okay, great. Let's go to Mike Falconberry in Charlotte, North Carolina. Who's on top there in North Carolina?
Ted Cruz, probably 80%, 20% between everybody else.
Let's go to Bob Diamond in Charlotte. Bob, who do you think?
Well, we did the Tea Party caucus, and Cruz won at 10 out of 11 locations, and Carson won the other one.
Okay, let's go to New Mexico. Jay Carroll.
I think it's a toss-up between Trump and Cruz right now.
Okay, Trump and Cruz. Let's go to North Augusta, South Carolina. Claude.
Trump and Cruz here.
Trump and Cruz. Let's go to San Augustine, Texas. Art.
I'm also the chair for the San Augustine Republican Party, and I would say within our county, Cruz has about 65%, and Trump's got about 30%, and the rest is up for grabs.
Okay, so Cruz and Trump again. Let's go to Missouri. Michael Milliken. Michael, are you there?
This is Mike Milliken. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think Ben Carson has the lead here in my district.
That's in Missouri. Where in Missouri are you?
Farmington.
Okay, and if there was a second place, who's second?
Probably Trump.
Okay, so Carson and Trump. All right, let's go to Atlanta, Georgia. Gail.
I would say that Cruz first and Carson second.
Okay, Cruz and Carson. Let's go to Terry in Trussville, Alabama.
Organizations, Cruz, and when you talk to people individually, it's all Trump.
Okay, so Trump has the lead, but the best organization is Ted Cruz.
Correct.
Okay, let's go to Terry in Palatka, Florida.
Hi, Ted Cruz is leading now, but he evolved. It was Trump, but now it's Ted Cruz.
So you've seen that switch over what, the last month, or when does that take?
Over the last 3 months, we do monthly polls here in Florida on a statewide basis and in individual groups, and then we have it's combined to a combined statewide, and it's Cruz is winning that in the state.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. Let's go to Dave in Phoenix, Arizona.
Toss-up between Trump and Carson.
Trump and Carson. So Cruz isn't resonating there in Phoenix, huh?
I would say he's hanging Rand Paul territory, but he's kind of probably fallen off more. And Cruz is up there, definitely, but it's probably the top tier is occupied by Carson and Trump, for sure.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to, we've got cell phone in Savannah, Georgia. That's 8728.
Hey, it's Jeannie Seaver again.
Yes, ma'am.
Couple things. I attended the Trump rally in Atlanta, Georgia, where there was over 10,000 people there. And I tell you, I have never seen a more diverse group. At the same time, I am hearing, supporters of Cruz. So it's Trump, Cruz, from what I'm hearing. More of Trump, but.
Got it. Trump and Cruz. All right, let's go to Karen in Van Alstyne, Texas. Karen, are you with us? Karen Tober?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Cruz country, but we're split between Cruz and Trump.
Okay. So, and do you see momentum for either of them?
No. I mean, it's
Okay, great. I appreciate that. And Tamara, there's some other people we haven't hit yet. Let's go to Roger in St. John's, Florida.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is really Barbara Thomas in West Virginia, and we're kind of Cruz and Trump here.
Cruz in first, or is that a split you're hearing?
It's probably, well, I want to say Cruz is ahead, but I think it's more tied.
Okay, it's tied. Let's go to Barbara in Sacramento.
Donald Trump, but it'd be great to have a ticket Trump, Cruz, Cruz, Trump, either one.
Okay. Tam, who else haven't we hit here yet?
Let's see. Who have we not hit? Should we just start calling on people?
We could just go down the list. How about Mike Murphy in Sylvia, Kansas?
There you go.
You want to know?
Hey, who are you hearing? Who's in the lead there? Trump, Cruz, Carson? Where's the enthusiasm?
Most of my activity's online. I'm in a very rural area, and I hear mostly Trump. Mostly Cruz, and Trump probably number 2.
Okay, great. So let's keep moving. You want to move down and just call in folks, Tam?
Absolutely. Let's just go for it.
All right, we've got a cell phone in Jupiter, Florida, 8355. Cell phone, Jupiter, Florida, 8355. Who's in the lead in Jupiter? Nope.
Okay. They got shy.
All right, let's go to, how about jump down here, Leslie Young in Cuba, Missouri. What are you hearing, Leslie?
I would say it's kind of split between Carson and Cruz with a little bit of Trump noise in there.
Carson and Cruz. I've never heard anybody use a little bit of noise with Trump in the same sentence, but we'll take it. All right, Tam, let's close it out with that. So, what I'm hearing.
Perfect.
What I'm hearing that I think is really interesting. So you've got in all the national polls, it's Carson and Trump, or Trump and Carson. And what I'm hearing on this call is it's Cruz and Trump with a little bit of Carson. So it's almost like Carson and Trump are switching in regard to what we hear from grassroots leadership versus what we hear in the national polls. And I'm going to close by positing a theory out there. One of the things that I see in the polls that doesn't work with all the grassroots stuff that I know is the polls are either polls of all adults or they're polls of likely voters. And there's something really interesting that misses, which is all the people that you hear on this call tonight, all the leaders, and all the members of all of their groups all vote all the time. In other words, they're not likely voters, they're absolutely voters. And I think you see this play out in election results over and over and over again, especially when the base is enthused. I think this is what we saw with the Matt Bevins win. In other words, Bevins is polling behind consistently 3 points in all the polls for several weeks leading up to the election. He won by, I think, 8.9. That's an extraordinary swing, and I think what explains it is you can't account for grassroots enthusiasm in the polls, and we have hundreds of thousands, millions of people participating in the grassroots movement in a very aggressive way all over the country. Those people vote somewhere near the 100% range. I mean, obviously there's emergencies and stuff that keep people from voting, but they're all voting. So they turn out in greater numbers and greater percentages than any poll can reflect. So I think when you see polling, you have to know it's suspect because there's no way to factor in this incredible grassroots enthusiasm. I want to thank all of you guys for being on the call tonight. The journalists that were here, I thank you for caring about what the grassroots thinks and for getting on these calls with us and reporting on what they think. I want to thank all the grassroots leaders who are on this call tonight because you guys are what makes the country great. Grassroots leadership, bottom up, in your communities, doing the work, working on campaigns, organizing local groups, walking precincts. You guys are what have always made this country great. You guys are what are going to save the country. So thanks for being with us. Look for our next announcement. We'll do another grassroots roundtable call next month. Thanks a lot, guys.